Hey everyone, it's Camber here with the Yo Pro No. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm here today with Jess Smith, 30-year-old career coach from Minneapolis, Minnesota. So thanks so much for being here, Jess.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Camber. I'm really excited to chat.
Me too. So let's just jump right in. Go ahead and give us a brief background on you. So where you're from, what you're currently doing, and then we'll talk more about how you got there in a second.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Minnesota. I spent the last 5 years living in San Francisco and spent some time in the recruiting world there. I worked in corporate recruiting for 4 years. And then after those 4 years, decided to make a transition to starting my own company. So I now do career coaching. And so I help people who are unhappy with their jobs to find careers that they love by connecting with their inner power.
Awesome. Thank you for being concise there. So a lot of things that I want to, unpack right away. But I'll get to the people not liking their job in a little bit because I think that's a hot topic that a lot of listeners and audience members will really relate to. But first things first, kind of walk us through those first few years of your career and what that looked like and what ultimately led you to, make the jump into starting your own business.
Yeah, for sure. So when I was in college, I was convinced that I wanted to be a buyer at a large retail corporation. That was my
Okay.
dream
Mhm.
career. That was what I wanted to do. I got a degree in retail merchandising and management. So it's very specifically tailored towards that. And I actually got a job right out of college, which is amazing. So I felt like I was so on track. I was achieving all of the things, right? And so it was really shocking to me once I got into this role. It was an analyst role, was the entry level position to become a buyer. Got into this role and was like, oh my God, this is not the right career path for me in any capacity. Didn't play to my strengths. I was not good at it. I didn't enjoy it, all of the things. It was really, really painful. It's a painful, embarrassing was the word I want to use, experience, because I thought I had it all figured out.
Mhm.
So I went through that. And that was really the start of my first clarity process, really taking that time to figure out who I am as a person and get reconnected with that and decide where do I want to go next and be really intentional about that.
Mhm.
So I went through the clarity process that I work on with my clients today. And the result for me was that I wanted to go work in recruiting. So at that point, I wanted to move out to California. I got a job at Salesforce, which is a Fortune 500 tech company out there. So I spent 4 years working on recruiting teams there, like I mentioned, and it was amazing. It was so great to finally have a job where I was excited to show up every day. I was excited about the work that I was doing. I was finally good at the work that I was doing. I have this freakish ability to remember names and stories. So that really, really worked well for me in
Okay.
recruiting. So I did that, loved it. And then after about 3 years, I was like, okay, what's the next evolution of my career going to be? And I really wanted to help people on a deeper level. I was really inspired by all the little mistakes people would make through the job search process. And so went through my own clarity process again. And the outcome this time was that I should go be an entrepreneur. So that's kind of how I got to where I am today. Still got to bring in my recruiting expertise and all of my own personal experiences with clarity to now help others with it as well.
Great. And can you, without giving too much away, like I don't want you to share anything that, is a paid product. But can you talk more about this clarity process and what that might look like? And maybe you need to start first by talking, about maybe some details about your company. So, how many clients do you normally see? What's like a good client for you? Kind of talk about that. And then maybe as a result, share what that clarity process looks like. Cause I'm really curious.
Yeah. So right now I work with people in a one-on-one capacity. All of my coaching is totally customized to the individual and where they are at with their career search. So that could look like a clarity piece, that could look like a job searching piece, right? But I only work with people who are focused on finding jobs that they really love. I personally don't work with people who are like, I need a job and I need it tomorrow. There are totally coaches out there for that. I'm just not the right
Do you
coach.
tell people that you're not a good fit when that happens?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. I do. So one of the questions that I like to ask people before I work with them is, would you rather take a little bit of extra time and end up in a job that you really, really love? Or do you want the process to happen faster and you're less attached to being really in love with that job? So that's kind of my defining factor for, is this person a fit to work with me or not? If they're looking for speed, I'm not the right person. If they're looking for quality, that's who I want to work with. And
Yeah.
both are okay.
Right. Right. Okay. And so that's really what embodies the clarity process, is what you're saying.
I would say that is who my ideal client is.
Mhm.
The clarity process for me involves getting really clear on who people are as a person, what their strengths are, what they love doing, what really lights them up. So we look for patterns in their energy, right? Of what activities are they doing that really lights them up and gives them energy versus what activities do they do that really deplete their energy and take away from their energy. And we use those clues to really start getting clear on what type of career path is going to be a good fit based on who you are as a person.
Awesome. I mean, I love that. I think who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
What kind of training and certification did you go through to become a career coach? And, how did you start your business? Like, how did you fund it? I'm always interested in talking to entrepreneurs about that.
Yeah. So I would say that my certification is spending 4 years working at a Fortune 500 tech
Mhm.
company in recruiting. During that time, I personally interviewed over 1,000 different candidates, and I've looked at even more resumes. There's a time in my career when I was looking at 200 to 300 resumes each week. So that's kind of like my experience. And then also bringing in my personal experience with clarity, right? I have been on this journey multiple times and have successfully brought myself into work that I love. And now that I've done it with other people, I know that it works for them as well.
Mhm.
So then your other question was, how did I start my business? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Funding wise, what did that look like?
Yeah. So I never thought that I would be an entrepreneur, to be honest with you. That was not on my to-do list. I definitely wanted to climb the corporate career ladder. And it wasn't until I had a director at my current company tell me, hey, Jess, what you really want to do is not here. You're going to have to leave and go start your own business, which was, the transparency was amazing. I so appreciated that. And so
Yeah.
that was my first um, idea, I guess, of like, oh, should I have a business? This had never occurred to me before. So at that point, did a bunch of research. And my first step personally was hiring a business coach. So I hired a business coach at very ground zero. I knew that I could help people get jobs and find things that they loved. I knew I was good on that, but I had no idea how to start a business.
Mhm.
I had no idea how to get clients. I had no idea how to do sales. And I'll be honest, I was very naive about the whole thing. I thought that it was going to be a lot easier than it turned out to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understandably. But I think what you said before, like you never thought you were going to be an entrepreneur. Like that's so many people are in those shoes. And I love to hear that your boss was so transparent, because you wouldn't be sitting here today if you weren't. And so I think that's really cool. And one thing I do like to ask entrepreneurs, from a funding standpoint, like, or I guess, do you feel secure financially now? Are you profitable? Like, what does that look like in the world of career coaching?
Yeah. So I would say yes, I feel good about where I'm at now. I
Mhm.
would say for people thinking about getting into entrepreneurship, the money for me at least was not like that. It was not immediate. I know some people do have that journey and that's amazing, but I would say be prepared for a stretch of like not having money, right? I thought that I was going to be awesome at sales simply because I was in recruiting, which was an incorrect thought pattern. I never have done sales before, technically, especially selling myself as my own product, right? So that's kind of a unique skill that I had to learn, and that wasn't something that I already had in my toolbox.
Mhm.
So I would say from a financial standpoint, for me, I was really lucky because I had a great corporate job. So I had a lot of financial cushion when I started.
Right.
I've also had access to money in other places that I knew would be there before taking the leap and leaving corporate. So
Right.
I spent 8 months still in the corporate world building my business before I
Okay.
actually left.
Okay. That's really helpful to know too, because it just, it shows that everything is really situational. And before you launch something, you obviously want to make sure, if your finances are a barrier for you to starting something as an entrepreneur, then obviously you want to make sure you have that cushion. But that's just something I always like to ask. Um, can you talk about a specific hardship that you have faced? If you haven't already, if you have, just mention it. But a specific hardship that you've faced as a young professional and how you grew from that.
Yeah. I would say the toughest thing that's happened for me was honestly landing in the wrong career. I was embarrassed. Like I said, there were lots of feelings of shame and like, how could this have possibly happened? Right. I felt like I had done all of the right things and I got the right degree and I was top of all my classes. Right. So how could I have possibly ended up somewhere where I was like, this is not a fit? And what it really gave to me was an opportunity to get to know myself. And like looking at it now, 7 years later, right? If I wouldn't have had that experience, I wouldn't have my business. I wouldn't be inspired to help people with this.
Mhm.
So I think that's one important thing to remember when you are in a tough moment is like, I am going to grow from this. And this is potentially just part of the path that I need to go through, right?
And I'm very glad you mentioned that because that is like the, you know, that is the core of the Yo Pro No is the path. And, you know, if I hadn't had my first job experience, I would not be here. Same thing for you. And so it just shows, you know, that this kind of has to happen sometimes, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. And that leads me to my other question, which is what do you think of this concept that, you know, so many college students or college age students have about going into the workplace and climbing the corporate ladder and, you know, like our generation, you know, the generation below us, Gen Z, you start to, you know, we start hearing things like, well, we just expect to go to the top quickly. And, you know, then we get there to the corporate world and this is not like, we're not the only two people that feel the way that we did. So what what do you say to that? Do you think that that is something that's going to ever change, or do you think that people's mindsets will shift about, you know, climbing the corporate ladder? What do you think?
It's an interesting question. I do think like as we get older, we become more mature, right? I think some of it is like we think we can go so fast sometimes simply because we haven't experienced it yet, right? We don't know what it's like because we've been in high school and we've been in college, which is totally different than the corporate career. I do think it'll be interesting to see how many people go down the entrepreneurship route in the future.
Mhm.
It's been interesting for me to see during like the height of COVID last year. I think a lot of people got laid off, right, and lost their jobs, which was really unfortunate. But I think it sparked a lot of people who had entrepreneurial ideas but had never acted on them to actually start acting on them. Like I noticed a surge of new career coaches
Mhm.
coming out in like May of 2009, 2020
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
So I really think that that could be an interesting thing moving forward as younger generations feel like I want to have that freedom. I
Mhm.
deserve this freedom, right? I can create this freedom for myself. I think there's going to be possibly more ambition to go out and do that, but we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. And to your point about there being a lot of career coaches kind of emerging from this time, what, you know, makes you stand out as a career coach?
Yeah. So I would say probably my demeanor and my approach. And I love this about career coaching. I have a lot of coaching friends. I'm actually like hosting a thing on Clubhouse later today with 4 other career coaches who I adore. And we all have our own unique quirks. We all, even though we're all talking about resumes and interviewing and clarity and all the things, right? We each have our own unique way of doing it, and we have our unique way of delivering that. So for me, I tend to be more of someone who's calm, even, unshakable. I also like to incorporate things like affirmations into my coaching. I like doing a lot of mindset work. I am getting certified in emotional freedom technique, and I'm so excited to bring that to my job seekers to help shift all of these limiting beliefs and fears that they have. So
Mhm.
for me in particular, that's a big piece of what I do, and bringing that into my coaching is something that people are either drawn to or they're not, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. That's a really, I like that you said people how they deliver things, and everyone has their own quirks. I think
Yeah,
some people who are looking for jobs will just resonate more with different quirks and different deliveries.
totally.
I think that's a great way to answer that. Um, mindful of time. So Jess, to wrap things up, what is a parting piece of advice that you'd like to share, or anything we didn't cover today in the interview that you want to share with this audience? What would that be?
Yeah. So the last thing I would want to share is just to remember that this is your one special life. This is your one special life that you get, and it's happening right now. So take advantage of that. Don't let that pass you by. Like, life is happening moment by moment, and you can't get time back. So make sure to take advantage of that.
Wow. Awesome way to end the interview. I don't know if we could end that any better way. But Jess, thank you so much for your time today and being on the YoPro Now.
Yeah, thanks for having me.